October 14th, 1943. The B-17 was called Lucky 13. It wasn't. The first shell hit the number 2 engine. The second took out the hydraulics. I gave the bailout order at 20,000 feet. 8 men, 8 parachutes. They went one by one through the bomb bay. I was last. I stepped into nothing. The plane was gone in 3 seconds. The chute opened at 10,000 feet. Below me, nothing but fields and forests. No roads, no towns. Good. That meant no Germans. Or so I thought. The field came up fast. I hit the mud at 30 miles an hour and tumbled 50 feet. I lay still for a full minute, listening. The parachute had to disappear. Every second it was visible was a death sentence. I had a silk map sewn into my jacket. Normandy. I was somewhere in Normandy. Then I heard an engine, a German night fighter hunting for survivors. I didn't move for 20 minutes. When the engine faded, I started moving. Voices. German voices. 50 yards to my left. I went down into the mud and didn't breathe. They walked the length of the field and turned back. Never saw me. The light in the farmhouse window was the only thing I trusted. I stopped at the edge of the yard, listened for 10 minutes. Nothing moved. I knocked twice, quietly. Like I wasn't sure I actually wanted anyone to answer. An old man, a candle, eyes like he'd been expecting this for years. I said the only French word I knew, Américain. He grabbed my sleeve and pulled. Inside, a kitchen, a woman, a crucifix on the wall, the smell of bread. She didn't scream. She just looked at her husband, then back at me, and started heating water. I washed my face for the first time in 30 hours. The farmer spoke for 10 minutes. I understood nothing except one word. Danger. He pointed at the floor. A trap door. I understood. I went down. He closed the door above me. I heard him move the rug back over it. The cellar smelled like potatoes and cold stone. It was the safest place I'd ever been. They came the next morning. 4 of them. I heard the farmer's voice, calm, unhurried, like a man with nothing to hide. One of them tapped the floor with a rifle butt, 2 feet from the trap door. Then silence. Then boots on gravel outside. An hour later, the trap door opened. The farmer handed down a bowl of soup. I stayed in that cellar for 5 days, learning to count the farmer's footsteps overhead. On the 5th day, he came down himself, brought a piece of paper. One word. Demain. Tomorrow. Someone was coming tomorrow. That night, I slept for 12 hours. The first real sleep since England. She arrived at dawn. No knock. She just came down the steps. She looked me over like she was buying a horse. Then she nodded once. She explained the escape line. 12 safe houses. 400 kilometers. Spain. She said 40% of the airmen who went through didn't make it. She said it like a weather report. She handed me papers. A new name. A new history. I was now a deaf-mute printer from Lyon. The clothes came next. French workers' trousers. A worn jacket. Rope-soled shoes. She held up a fragment of mirror. I didn't recognize myself. 3 rules. Don't speak. Don't make eye contact with Germans. Walk like you belong. She made me walk across the cellar 20 times until I stopped looking like a soldier. Before we left, I shook the farmer's hand. He shook his head, like I was thanking him for something anyone would do. We left at 4 a.m. into the dark. She walked fast. I kept up. By sunrise, we were at the edge of a village. She didn't stop. She just kept walking. The village was waking up. Bakers, farmers, Germans. A soldier crossed the street toward us. I kept my eyes down. He glanced at me for half a second. Then he was gone. The checkpoint was at the south end of town. She handed over both our papers without being asked. He looked at my papers, then at me, then at my hands. She spoke before we could ask me anything. Something sharp, something impatient. He handed the papers back. We walked through. I didn't exhale for 50 feet. The second safe house was above a bakery. We went up the back stairs. A room, a cot, a bucket, a skylight. She said we'd leave in 2 days, train to Toulouse. That evening, I watched the square below through 2 inches of glass. Ordinary life, occupied life. 2 other men were in the attic, a Canadian navigator, a British SOE agent. None of us used real names. The next morning, the street below went quiet. That was never good. Boots on the stairs, ground floor, then first floor. The baker had prepared for this. I heard them come through the storeroom, knocking barrels 2 feet away, then silence. 10 minutes of it. When the baker lifted the lid, I was covered head to foot in flour. The Canadians started laughing. We all did. It was that or something else. That evening, a man arrived with new documents. Better than the first set, Toulouse. Then a guide to the mountain. We left for the station at 7. 3 minutes apart. The station was full of Germans. Half the passengers were in uniform. Marguerite bought the tickets. I stood 3 feet away and looked at the departures board. We boarded separately. 3rd class, middle carriage. I found the compartment. She was already there. The train moved at 9:14, right on schedule. The Germans were always on schedule. He came in at the second stop. Wehrmacht Major, Tall, friendly smile. I closed my eyes. I had to look asleep or I'd look terrified. He spoke to her for 20 minutes. I understood nothing, but her answers were smooth as silk. He gestured at me, said something. She said, "My brother, sick, going home." He leaned over and looked at my face. 4 seconds. The longest 4 seconds of my life. He sat back, said something to her. She smiled politely. An hour later, the major was asleep. I opened my eyes for the first time. She looked at me. I looked at her. That was the whole conversation. Toulouse, 200 kilometers from the Spanish border. Toulouse felt different from the north, warmer, more defiant. The third safe house was a wine cellar. I was beginning to see a pattern. 2 other evaders were already there. Both had been waiting for weeks. We waited 9 days for the guide. On the 9th day, Marguerite came down at midnight. "Tomorrow night, be ready at 10. She brought mountain clothes, thick wool, rope-soled boots, a canteen. She showed me the route. 4,000 meters in winter. We left Toulouse at 10 p.m., 5 of us. A truck with a false floor. 3 hours in a wooden box under a load of turnips. The truck stopped. German voices. The driver laughed at something. Then we moved again. The truck stopped for the last time in a forest. We climbed out into cold mountain air. The guide was a Basque shepherd named Miguel. He looked at us the way you look at a problem. We started at midnight, no light. The first hour was easy. The second wasn't. At 2,000 meters, the snow started. By midnight, it was a whiteout. Miguel walked like it wasn't happening. The RAF pilot fell twice. The third time, he couldn't get up alone. At 3,000 meters, my ankle went. A crack in the rock under the snow. She had me on my feet before I could say anything. I walked on it for 4 more hours. You don't stop in the Pyrenees in winter. Miguel raised his hand. We stopped. Below us, light. He pointed at a rock formation. We moved without a sound. They swept the slope with their lights. 90 meters, 60, 40. The light moved over us and kept going. 20 minutes later, the lights were gone. Miguel didn't wait. He just started walking again. The pass was at 4,100 meters. We reached it at dawn. And then the climb stopped because there was nowhere left to go up. Spain was below us. Different light, different air. She said, "That's Spain." I said, "I know." The descent was faster. Everything hurt less going down. At 2,000 meters, the snow stopped. At 1,000, we could smell the earth again. At the base of the mountain, Miguel stopped. His job ended at the border. We walked onto Spanish soil at 7:30 in the morning. It took 8 hours. Everything was brown and dry and quiet. Nothing like France, nothing like England. We found a stream. The coldest water I've ever tasted. The best water I've ever tasted. 2 kilometers from the stream, my legs stopped. Just stopped. She didn't say anything soft. She said, "The village is 3 kilometers. Move." The village appeared at 9 a.m. Whitewashed walls, a church tower, a dog barking. A woman saw us first. She crossed herself and called for her husband. The Guardia Civil arrived in 15 minutes. 2 of them, rifled. We put our hands up without being asked. It seemed like the sensible thing. I reached very slowly for my dog tag. They took us to the village square, sat us against the church wall, gave us water. An officer questioned us one by one. My French was useless. Turns out my English wasn't. U.S. Army Air Force, serial number, rank, name. It was the most I'd said out loud in 3 weeks. Then we waited. Spain was neutral. That meant they could do anything. Madrid, American consulate. Someone would come. They put us in a village inn, locked door, clean sheets, the best prison I'd ever been in. A woman brought bread and olive oil. I ate it slowly. My hands were shaking. 3 days. The innkeeper's daughter taught me to say gracias. On the 4th day, a car with American plates pulled into the square. The man who came in was from Iowa. He said, "You boys look terrible." I said, "Yes, sir." Serial number confirmed. Dog tags confirmed. I was real. I was American. I was going home. Marguerite's papers were different. She couldn't come the same way I was going. I asked the official, "What happens to her?" He said, "She goes back." She had 16 men to bring out behind me. She was going back across the mountain. We had dinner that night. The innkeeper opened a bottle of wine. She told me her real name. I've never told anyone. It's hers to keep. The car came at 6. She was up before me. I held out my hand. She shook it. Short, firm, like a colleague. She turned and walked back toward the mountains. She didn't look back. She never looked back. I stood there until she was out of sight. The official said, "Captain, time to go." 8 hours in the back of a consulate car. I slept through most of Spain. Gibraltar, the Rock. The most British thing I'd ever seen. The RAF base was at the base of the Rock. A Lancaster was warming up on the runway. I climbed in through the belly hatch. The crew didn't ask where I'd been. We took off north. England was 3 hours away. Below us, the Bay of Biscay. The same water I'd been looking at for 89 days. I saw England from 40 miles out. green, impossibly green. We touched down at 1400, an English autumn afternoon. It smelled like wet grass and aviation fuel. I climbed out and stood on English ground. My ankle still hurt. I didn't care. There was a debrief, standard. They asked everything. I told them almost everything. I didn't give them her real name. I'd been asked not to. The debrief lasted 4 hours. At the end, a wing commander shook my hand. They let me send a telegram, 20 words. I used 19. A new uniform arrived. It fit wrong. I'd lost 15 pounds in France. The mess was serving lamb stew. I ate 2 plates without looking up. I slept in a real bed for the first time in 89 days. I thought about her crossing those mountains again, in the dark, in the snow, with the next man. New orders arrived 3 days later. New crew, new aircraft, back to work. The ground crew asked where I'd been. I said, France. They said, nice this time of year? The new aircraft was called Persistent. Someone in the crew had a sense of humor. I climbed into the cockpit on October 30th. 2 weeks after the crash, it felt like 2 years. 4 engines, all 4 this time. The runway fell away. England fell away. The channel appeared below. At 20,000 feet, France appeared. Same fields, same farms, same gray sky. Somewhere down there, people were hiding airmen in cellars, in barns, in flour barrels. We held the formation for 6 hours. All 4 engines. No flak. A quiet day. We landed at 1700. All aircraft accounted for. A rare day. I filed my mission report. Drank a cup of tea. Thought about what I'd trade for a cup of coffee. 6 weeks later, a letter came through official channels. No name. Postmark Spain. 1 sentence. In English. Number 16 arrived safely. I sat with that letter for 20 minutes. Then I put it in my breast pocket. The war ran on. More missions, more crews, more names to learn. May 8th, 1945. VE Day. I was in a Wiltshire pub when the news came. I thought of the cellar, the farmer, the flour barrel, the train. I thought of a woman walking back into the mountains, not looking back. I came home to Kansas in September 1945. The corn was up. My mother didn't say anything. She just put her hands on my face. The farm was the same. The kitchen smelled like bread. My father asked about the missions, not about the 89 days. I was grateful. That night I slept in my childhood bedroom. Stars through the window. No guards, no wire, no searchlights. The letter from Spain was still in my jacket, still is. Every October I thought about the mountain, about the cold, about the snow coming sideways. I never went back to France, but I thought about it every October for the rest of my life. 47 Allied airmen went through the network that year. 91 made it home. The guides never made the lists. They never asked to. She crossed those mountains 23 times. I counted later, from reports that mentioned a woman guide. She survived the war. I found that out in 1947. We never met again. Those were the rules she lived by. I told my children I was shot down over France, that French people helped me, that I walked home. I didn't tell them about the flour barrel, or the 89 days, or the letter. The war ended. 55 million people died in it. I was not one of them. The farmer in Normandy died in 1951. His wife sent me a card. If they'd found me in that cellar, he'd have been shot in his own yard. There's no word for what I owe that man. There isn't one. I wrote it all down in 1968. My children found it after I died. 89 days, start to finish. The longest and shortest of my life. War teaches you what ordinary people will do. Most of the answers surprise me. I've told the flour barrel story at dinner parties for 40 years. People laugh every time. There are other parts of the story I've never told at dinner. They stay in the journal. I flew 31 more missions after France. Everyone felt like borrowed time. The French people who helped us risked everything. For strangers. For men they'd never meet again. 3,000 Allied airmen were brought home through networks like hers. The guides are mostly forgotten now. The Pyrenees are still there. Still 4,000 meters. Still cold in October. There is still a path over the pass. Hikers use it now. They probably don't know what happened on that path. Most history is underground. The letter from Spain is still in the jacket. The jacket is in my youngest daughter's closet. I've spent my whole life trying to figure out what I owe the people who brought me home. I haven't finished. The plane was called Lucky 13. Turns out it was. Day 1 in the cellar. Day 89 in Spain. 89 days between those 2 dark rooms. Miguel went back over the mountain the same night we crossed. He had another group waiting. The baker in the village was arrested 3 months later. He didn't talk. He spent 14 months in a German prison. He came home. Not everyone did. Ordinary people. That's what the history books say. Ordinary people did extraordinary things. I've never been sure what makes someone decide to open a door at midnight for a stranger. I think some people just decide quietly by themselves with no audience. what kind of person they're going to be. The silk map for my jacket is framed in my study. 20 countries, one route south. I keep 3 things from those 89 days. The map, the letter, the knowledge that I was carried. I didn't make it home on my own. No one does. The war ended 80 years ago. The debts haven't. Remember the guides. Remember the farmers. Remember the bakers who hid men in flour barrels. They asked for nothing in return. Some of them got nothing but a grave. The only thing I could give back was memory. So I wrote it down. All 8 men from Lucky 13 made it home. It's the only statistic from that war I'm proud of. 14th, 1943. I stepped into nothing. The plane was gone in 3 seconds. What came after, that's the whole story.